Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the Jamodi Podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
Coach, that big motivator for doing this really isn't to learn more out-of-bounds plays or to learn a new defense or offense. And you and I have actually been able to have, previously some offensive talks, which are really fun to have. But in my opinion, this is the good stuff. Yeah. This is the stuff that if I get time with you that I really want to learn and know from. And if anybody's ever that has been listening to this has been disappointed with the lack of X's and O's content, it's not that I don't care about that or that I'm so confident or prideful that I don't want to learn anything else. No, I'm always reading and trying to find new ways to do what we're doing. But this is, to me, the good stuff. 10% is what happens to us. 90% is how we respond. And that's the same with players, but also with coaches. And I think a huge nugget that you said, and I didn't want to breeze past it, was that it's over when you get off the court. I think one of the most important thing, if every coach could coach their own son, it would be very helpful at some point, or their own kid, or view all of your players as that, because when you do coach your own son and he has done things in a game that are just burning you up inside, you can't take it home. When he's home, you just got to be parent at that point, and you got to let it go. The last 3 years have helped me with that, but I think you are right. Most kids are pleasers. And most kids, I think, most players want to know that their coach is pleased with them. And after a loss or after a poor individual performance or after a bad practice, I don't think they need more of the hammer. And I think they need more of compassion and more of the arm around and said, hey, can't wait to coach you tomorrow. Something like that. But I thought that was a huge point that you made.
Thank you.
Going to, I can't wait for this, standards and pillars of your program. Because again, I love the culture that you've built there, and this is a small thing, but I think for all of us coaches to think about is our locker room, our facilities, and any place where we do have some control over what can be. I think the way that you guys have branded your facilities, you have the goat head, right? Is the goat, right?
Yeah, the goat.
Yeah, the goat head is all
Brady.
over. That's right, the goat. But the goat head is all over your hallways. The WPI, the color scheme, there's different patterns. To me, everything there was intentional, and that's a part of culture. For us to think that culture is only words or a T-shirt or a poster or whatever, it's all everything. So, what are those standards and pillars of your program?
Yeah, I mean, we have 5, but it's alignment, belief, consistency, development, and edge. And hopefully, every one of my players could, repeat that, especially by the end of their freshman year. So the big thing for me is alignment. It's something I talk to our guys and we work on a lot. It's everyone being on the same page and moving in the same direction and being aligned in our terminology, being aligned as assistant coaches with, how we're teaching things, and, just every way, shape, or form through our program needs to be alignment. And, it's not perfect. You're going to get off alignment. But if you have that as a North Star, you can, pull yourself back into alignment, pretty easily. Because we are trying to keep things pretty simple, I think the other big thing for us is consistency. I think it's been a hallmark of our program, and we've won 20 more games, I think 17 out of the last 20 years. That's to me something I'm really proud about, because I think it shows that our core values are, you know, setting the table, for our success. And what I mean by consistency is, I read a book a long time ago. It was John Chaney's book, and I can't remember the name of it. But he had a thing in there where he called them, I think, called people like cash register guys. And it was like if on a cash register, if you press a seven, you want to get a seven. If you press a nine, you want to get a nine. And I think we are all looking for that in our coaches as players, and we're all looking for it in our players as coaches.
Hmm.
I know. I think back, my mom, is like, she's a cash register guy. You pray, you press, she's a 10, you press 10, you're going to get a 10 every single day, you
Hmm.
know. And with our players, I think it's like the consistency of like, you know, we don't want guys that are a seven one day and a three the next day and a nine one day and then a two the next day. It's like, if you're a seven, be a seven, man, like every day. You know what I mean? And I think that helps, like, I think I was listening to your podcast and you were making the point, and your guest was making the point about the kids that obsess over it, that love it and like it, you know. And I think, everyone's in a different stage. It's great
Yeah.
to get 10 guys that are absolutely obsessed, but maybe you have like valuable players on your team that, love it, but they're not obsessed with it. But like, hey man, you'd be a solid seven for us every day. So being consistent, and I think being consistent as coaches, like in your preparation and how we go about our business, is really like a great like feeling for a player to know what you're
Yep.
getting from your coaches every day.
That's it. And I was so glad that you brought it back to that point, because you're right on the money. The players that are up and down, it's hard to ride that roller coaster with them when you don't know, okay, how's Mike today? How's Johnny today? And it's so, there's a peace and comfort that I think walking into the gym of, these kids they're cash register players. They're going to be who they are almost every day. But coach,
Yep.
I don't know if that happens if we're not that way. I played for a guy for my first 3 years that from day to day, we had no clue at Baylor. And so we'd come in, how is he? Like, we'd ask the managers who had seen him earlier in the day, what's he like today? Oh, and they go, oh, it's not good.
It's one of those
Like,
things. Yeah.
So whatever we want to see happening in the culture with our players, I gotta believe that we have to do it too, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think when I look at, like, you look at good programs, you can kind of see them. You can feel it, when you see them, you just like, oh, those guys, that's a good program. You can kind of tell. Um, and I think one of the reasons you can tell is it could be the simplest thing, but that they're doing could be a warm up, it could be a timeout, it could be, something, small like that, but you can see that they're in lockstep because this is how they do things. This is what they do. And then the biggest thing to us after, the alignment and consistency piece is, I'm a huge believer in what we call edge, and it's like, it's like, you know, do you really have it, or are you just kind of like talking about it, or do you really have it, so it's like there's like another level of competitiveness, I think. There's
Yeah.
another level of preparation, I think. Give yourself an edge. you know um we had a we had a saying. I don't really use it much anymore, but if it kind of resonated with people for a while here, and I know my one of my former assistants uses it, and it's care more.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to care, but can you care that little bit more? And I think that the care more thing is like about that edge that we try to bring to competition, bring it to practice, bring it to everything that we're doing.
I love care more. I think you're right. Like, we need to be trying to squeeze just every ounce of care out of our players every single day. That also, again, it always circles back to that extreme ownership that Jocko Willick talks about.
Yeah.
That means we need to care more. That means we don't have an off day. That we have to show up full. We can't show up empty to any practice, any workouts, and we got to pour out for them. But that care more piece, Coach Frosty's book, Make the Big Time Where You Are, he talks about the edge. There's a coin, but there's two sides to the coin, and that's your performance, either good or bad. But there's a third piece to it. It's the edge. It's the edge of the coin. That's the place that most players can't go to. Do you feel like, from the players you have or you've seen, that athletes know really how to give 100%? Do you see that quite a bit?
I have some guys that are like that. It's funny. We were doing individual meetings, and I think with some players, they get to a point in their career, they're really good players, and but I'd say, like, hey, you're like an 85% guy. And sometimes you're like, what do you mean? Like, well, you know what, the other 15% is, prehab before practice. It's stretching after practice, because you're a guy who's going to play a lot of minutes for us. You already got quite a few miles on your tires, so how you take care of your body is that extra 15% of it, where that's going to be the thing that causes you to either be an all-American type player, or just like an all-conference type player. So sometimes it's like they're living in the margins. But I totally agree with you. It's funny that the Frosty book thing, like, nobody can really get their hands on, I think, but
if you go to Amazon, it's like a $65 book. And then my old athletic director from last year had a knockoff copy of it that he let me borrow. Yeah. So I got to read it. But
it's like such a big, I remember that book I was a huge Don Meyer fan. I was like the guy that had all 32 of his, like, VHS tapes, and I was that dude. And but he would always talk about that book, like, Make the Big Time Where You Are. And it's like, I think the title's pretty self-explanatory. And I was like, I always thought about that when I was a JV high school coach. I was like, I'm going to be the best JV high school coach I can be, absolutely. I'm going to make this like a special experience, that kind of thing. And I think if you have that mindset, whether you're at WPI, Faith, or you end up at Duke or something, like, having that mindset is that travels,
and that makes you look at everything through a different lens. If I'm trying to make Grapevine Faith Christian School with 334 kids the big time, what does that mean? What does that look like? With the resources we have, how can I care more? How can we get every bit? I can't just go to a parent or a group of parents and say, hey, with $50,000, I think we could do a lot of stuff. That's not going to happen. That doesn't exist. So with what we have, what can I do? And I think that with those lens, you can surprise yourself. And then when you're learning from other people, like there's this coach out in Indiana, I was following him and then his team on Twitter, and that kind of created the relationship through that, just following them. But they hung a bell in their gym. And when a player is doing a shooting game and he gets to a certain number, he gets to go ring the bell. After a game, they get to ring the bell. They get to choose a fan of every game after a win to ring the bell. And I'm like, how much is a bell? It's $20. And you have your maintenance group stick it on the wall.
Priceless.
And that's culture. Yeah, like what the return on that. But if I'm just thinking about what's next, or all of what we don't have, then maybe we miss out.
For sure.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.